Hi everyone, welcome back to Parashat Pantry. This week we will be studying Parashat Tazria Metzora. It is a double portion and we will be focusing more on Leviticus chapter 14. Last week, if you tuned in, we read about the separation between kosher and non-kosher animals. And the Torah continues this week by focusing on the anatomy of human beings, addressing different bodily functions and illnesses. And this, I have to say, is a very famous portion. It's the portion that talks about skin diseases like leprosy, bodily emissions, pregnancy, and even mold. So, you might be thinking, what are we going to do with this week's portion? Well, this portion I always tell our bar mitzvah students, even though it might be a little bit difficult and awkward to read, it's as if we have struck gold with this portion. Because the harder the portion, the more interpretations there are about it. So this week's portion is very deep when we think about its understanding. So although the illnesses that are discussed in this week's Torah portion are within the realm of the physical and the medical, the Torah diagnoses these challenges and their significance and prescribes a treatment that isn't medical, but actually is spiritual. And the treatment is, as God instructs, to use cedar wood, blood, and the hyssop plant. So we're familiar with the cedar wood. Interesting, a lot of the cleansing rituals used blood, but what is the hyssop plant? Well, you may know hyssop, better known as za'atar, an amazing spice blend that we often eat in Israel. I personally love cooking and eating za'atar as well. I think it is one of the best kept secrets. So here's the thing about the cedar wood and the hyssop that are used for this ritual of spiritual healing. Rashi comments that the cedar is among the tallest trees. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, the hyssop is one of the world's smallest and weakest plants. So what do we make of this? A spiritual healing is one of humility. For when we use the hyssop, it humbles us. So that is a really important lesson from this week's Torah portion. In order to obtain a spiritual healing, we have to be humbled. So this week, let us not think only of ourselves or only what is important to us. It's not to have self-importance, but rather to have humility and to make space for others in our world as well. So we're going to cook with this favorite spice blend of za'atar. And I thought we would do something exciting, which is to try a recipe from this brand new cookbook. It's called Jewi-ish, and it is created by Cohen. I met Jake this week on a Rashi school program where he cooked with us, and his recipes are spreading across the nation and the Jewish world with great popularity. So I thought it would be fun to start cooking my way through this cookbook. Starting with a recipe, you might think you would start with matzo ball soup or the black and white cookies, but I found a recipe for fresh Za'atar Pesto Risotto. So I've already done a few things to prepare this recipe. First of all, we have prepared the pesto in the blender. So I have already blended together parsley and toasted pine nuts and sesame, oil, Parmesan, garlic. I added za'atar in as well, salt, and a little bit of water. Blended this all together in the blender. I also have on my stove 2 tablespoons of butter in my pot, and also half of a white onion. And I have softened the onion. It has a nice little color to it, and I'm just about ready to add the rice. We have to use arborio rice, 2 cups, and we're going to toast this rice for a few minutes until it's nice and fragrant in with the butter and the onions. So I'm just going to put this on a low to medium heat, let it go for a few minutes so that it gets a nice little color. Okay, the rice is a bit toasted, and I am going to add my half cup of dry white wine until it is completely absorbed. We have a lot of continuous stirring to do. So the wine is absorbed, and I have next to me on the stove a saucepan with 8 cups of broth that I have been simmering, and I am going to add a ladle full of broth at a time into the risotto mixture and keep stirring until all of the broth is absorbed into the risotto, and it's going to puff up nice and soft. So this whole process is going to take about 20 minutes. So I am going to fast forward while we get this done. Okay, I have used up all of the stock. All the 8 cups are absorbed into the risotto, and it is nice and fluffy and thick. You can see here. And now I have only 2 more things left to do. One is to add a 1/4 cup of mascarpone cheese. I'm going to use cream cheese because that's what I have in the pantry. So I have turned off the heat as I'm stirring in the cream cheese. And the only other thing left to do is to add the pesto that I made, the Za'atar Pesto. In it is going to go a beautiful green color. It's going to turn this risotto green. So I am going to mix that all up. So that is it. I am just going to give you a view of this, and we're going to taste it and season with salt, pepper, and Parmesan cheese. So, hope you have a great week, everyone. Stay humble, and Shabbat Shalom. לעשות בדברי תורה, לעשות